Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to try and understand the seemingly bottomless stomachs of our Labrador friends. You know those puppy dog eyes they give you when they want another treat? Well, what if their genes are actually playing a part in that?
It's a fascinating question, and we're going to explore some cutting-edge research from the journal Science that sheds light on just that. Why some labs seem to have a genetic predisposition for begging for food, and how that might be connected to their risk of obesity.
Okay, so I've definitely heard that labs are more prone to being overweight, and I think golden retrievers have a similar reputation, right?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, there's been some research already that connects a gene called POMC to overeating in labs. And wouldn't you know it, this same gene variant is also found more often in other breeds that love food, like those golden retrievers you mentioned.
Interesting. So did identifying this POMC gene solve the mystery, or was it just one piece of the puzzle?
It was a big clue, but it didn't tell the whole story. So researchers kept digging. They analyzed DNA from 241 Labradors in the UK, but they didn't just look at genes. They also collected data on the dog's body fat, how often they begged for food, and even how closely their owners were monitoring their diet.
So they were really going for a holistic view. I like it. Did they find any other genes that might explain why some labs gobble up everything in sight?
They did. It turns out that 5 genes were potentially linked to obesity, but one stood out: DEN and D1B. Labradors with a certain variation of this gene had, on average, about 8% more body fat than labs without it.
8%. That seems like a pretty big difference.
Oh, it is. It could be the difference between a 60-pound lab and a 65-pound lab.
Wow. So DEND1B is clearly a major player here, but how does it actually work? What does this gene do?
Well, DEN in D1B plays a role in how the brain responds to food cues, specifically the signals that tell us when we're full. Think of those complex pathways like leptin signaling, which helps control our energy balance, and even the reward pathways that make us feel good when we eat.
So this gene is kind of like a control panel for a dog's appetite. And does this have any implications beyond just our four-legged friends?
You got it. And you're right to think beyond dogs. Interestingly, the DNNE1B gene has also been associated with obesity in humans, so this research points to a shared genetic basis for obesity across species.
Whoa, wait, so does that mean my craving for pizza might be genetic?
Well, it's not that straightforward. But it does suggest that our genes can have a significant impact on our relationship with food.
Mind-blowing. So researchers can actually calculate a lab's risk of obesity based on their genes. Is there like a risk scoring system now?
That's right. They can actually calculate an individual lab's obesity risk based on their unique genetic profile. But don't worry, we're not suggesting everyone rush out to get their dog's DNA tested.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how can someone tell if their lab needs a little extra help staying trim?
Just watch their behavior. If your lab acts like they would clean out your pantry if given the chance, well, that's a good sign you might need to be more careful with their diet. Are they always begging? Do they inhale their meals in like 2 seconds? These are all things to look out for.
You know, it's like that friend who can never say no to the dessert tray. Maybe DEND1B is to blame.
Yeah, it really is. Some dogs are just hardwired to be more food motivated. But here's the thing. The study also found that what the owners did played a big part in whether a dog with those hungry genes actually became overweight.
Oh, really? So even if a lab has those genes, it doesn't necessarily mean they're destined for weight problems.
Exactly. The researchers saw that Labradors who had a higher genetic risk for obesity could actually stay at a healthy weight if their owners were very careful about how they managed their diet.
That makes sense. I mean, we know portion control is important for everyone, even our furry friends. But I'm curious, how strict did the owners have to be? Was it like hiding treats and everything?
Well, it involved being really precise with portion sizes, watching those treats, and definitely not giving in to those puppy dog eyes at the dinner table.
So it sounds a lot like the advice we get for humans trying to manage their weight. What about the labs with lower genetic risk? Did they pretty much get a free pass when it came to food?
It's interesting. Those dogs seemed to stay at a healthy weight regardless of what their owners did with their food. It really seemed like their genes were keeping their appetite in check.
So there's a whole spectrum of how genes affect appetite. Some labs are naturally lean, while others need a little more help from us to keep trim.
That's exactly it. And that's why it's so important to understand your dog as an individual. Their needs, their tendencies, all of that.
This research has implications for more than just Labrador retrievers, right? Like, could it help us understand obesity in other animals or even humans?
You're absolutely right. This study adds to our overall understanding of obesity.
Yeah.
It's not just about labs. It's relevant to all sorts of mammals, even us.
Okay, so what's the main takeaway here? What should someone do if they're concerned about their lab's weight?
Well, first of all, just pay attention to how your dog acts. Are they always begging for food? Do they gobble down their food in an instant? Would they raid your pantry if you let them?
Those are some pretty good indicators.
Right. You don't always need a genetic test. Your dog's behavior can tell you a lot.
So even if a lab is predisposed to overeating, it's not a for sure thing that they'll become obese, right?
Yep, that's right. With a balanced diet and careful portion control, even those dogs can stay at a healthy weight.
You know, it's amazing how similar dogs and humans can be when it comes to food.
It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? It really looks like our genes can shape how we relate to food, no matter what species we are.
If genes play such a big part in a dog wanting to eat, it makes you wonder how much of our own eating habits are just part of our DNA. Is it even possible to change?
That's a great question, and it brings us to our last point for everyone to think about.
If just one tiny gene change can have such a big impact on how much a dog weighs, what does that mean for us? You know, like how much control do we really have over our own eating habits? Are we just kind of programmed by our genes?
That's a great question, and scientists are still working on the answer. We know for sure that genes affect things like our metabolism and how full we feel after a meal, and even like what tastes we prefer. So maybe you can't blame your genes for wanting that ice cream at midnight, but it's definitely interesting to think about how much our DNA might be shaping our relationship with food.
Right. Like imagine if we could get diet advice that was tailored to our specific genes. Could we actually outsmart our own biology?
It might not be as crazy as it sounds. There's this whole field called nutrigenomics, where they're studying how our individual genes change the way our bodies respond to food. The idea is to use that information to create totally personalized diets.
So maybe someday, instead of just following some generic diet, we'll have plans made just for us based on our genes. That's pretty wild.
It really is cutting-edge research. I think it holds a lot of potential for the future of nutrition.
Well, I can definitely say that this deep dive has made me think about obesity in a whole new way. It's not just about willpower, it's so much more complicated than that.
I agree. It's a really complex issue, and our genes are definitely part of the equation.
Wow.
But it's not the whole story. There's also our environment, our lifestyle choices, and even the bacteria in our gut. It's all connected.
It sounds like there's still a lot to learn. So, to everyone listening, next time you see a lab with those puppy dog eyes begging for treats, just remember, those hungry genes might be playing a role.
And as we learned today, our own genes might be influencing our own eating habits in ways we haven't even considered. It's something to think about as you continue on your own food journey.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating deep dive into the world of genetics and obesity, both in dogs and in us. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the most interesting parts of science.